Hello and welcome to the big picture. 9 weeks after the outgoing governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Raghuram Rajan, surprised everyone by announcing his stepping down at the end of his term, the government has managed to find his successor. It has appointed URJIT PATEL to succeed Rajan. Patel, a deputy governor of the RBI who has worked closely with Rajan during the last 3 years, was chosen above some other distinguished names who were shortlisted. So how and why URJIT Patel made the grade and not others who were shortlisted? What does the appointment of URJIT Patel mean to the central bank? Will it mean less friction between the government and the RBI, which was witnessed in the last over 2 years during Rajan's tenure? What are the challenges before the new RBI governor? We will discuss all this today with CM Vasudev, former Finance Secretary, Government of India, Nitin Desai, former Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India, Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, N.R. Bhanumurthy, Member, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, and A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director, Business Standard. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Vasudev, what does this appointment mean? Is continuity what the government was looking for, and does this mean continuity?
Yeah, I think many factors would have come into play when the government took this decision. Of course, the paramount one was that given the extensive sort of media comment on Raghuram Rajan's not getting another term, I think government was very keen to have somebody who has professional credentials and who would not give the impression that government is foisting somebody as a political appointee. So having an internal candidate as a deputy governor and a senior deputy governor of 3.5 years standing, who has worked closely with the governor on monetary policy and has authored many of the monetary policy changes, including the monetary policy committee and all that. So I think it was a very safe decision in that sense, and I think it's a good one also. Because, of course, URJIT Patel doesn't have the international recognition of Raghuram Rajan, and many would think that as compared to many of his predecessors, he may be a little lightweight governor. But I think he has a very strong background. He's got extensive experience across different sectors. He has worked in the banking sector. He has worked in the real sector. He has worked on the capital market side. He has worked in the Ministry of Finance. In fact, he was consultant in the Economic Affairs Department when I was there. And he's got a strong academic background. So he has a very large breadth of knowledge, understanding of different sectors of the economy, so to say, has been worked on the other side of the table.
Okay.
And also, I think he has okay. All right.
Okay, I'll come back to you, sir. Mr. Desai?
Sure.
Normally, you don't find deputy governors being appointed governors. So this is some kind of a change which we have.
Well, it's happened. Reddy.
Not many.
Not too many, but there have been instances.
Reddy was there.
Reddy was the only one.
Reddy was
Reddy,
the first governor without a break.
Yes, that's a different matter.
Yeah.
But the fact is that I think
Mr. Ghosh was the only
in
Ghosh
some
was the
ways
funny
this
one.
is quite
Yes.
crucial, this dimension, because I think what the government is trying to do is to maintain a sense of continuity in what is probably the most important change which is underway. And that is the inflation targeting and the Monetary Policy Committee. Second, there's a dimension which I would also stress. He has worked on debt markets. He did a report on debt markets also, if I remember right. Yeah. And I'd say that is another important dimension. I frankly think this is an excellent choice. It's a right combination of somebody with first-hand knowledge of how the capital market operates and somebody who has very good academic credibility. I come from a more academic background, and I would say that he is a person who certainly has very high standing amongst people, academics working in this area. So I think it's an excellent choice.
Low
and
profile.
In terms of international standing,
he's low profile.
is low profile. He is not going to be somebody who's going to talk about other issues. Which, but let me say that in his own area, he is a very tough-minded chap. My impression is that he played a key role in the actual nitty-gritty of the monetary policy agreement.
Okay, Mr. Dua?
I think it's an excellent choice. It may be that
But
he's
because there were a lot of doubts. I mean, I'm quoting Mr. Desai's, the last program which we did on the legacy of Rajan. I remember Mr. Desai saying that a rock star being followed by a bhajan singer.
No, but that does not happen. In all fairness to government,
Yes.
that has not happened.
That has not happened.
I
And
think
so let us be fair to where fairness
I think the
is
person
required.
who's been selected is an insider. He knows how the federal bank works. He knows how the government works. So the government government has worked with him for the past in the past. So they haven't gone in for.
And he cuts across political
Absolutely.
because he was appointed by the UPA.
I think the government has selected him for a number of reasons, apart from his own distinguished career, both academically as well as government, as well as in the government-related jobs and the various committees which he's headed. But government wasn't. I don't think they wanted a surprise. They wanted something which somebody who can work with the government, because Indian standing, I think, internationally was taking a bit of a hit because of the friction between the central bank and the federal government, which had lasted for too long. It's not that either side, it's very difficult to say if there was anyone specifically at fault, but it was pretty obvious that the two were not getting along on the same track. I think that one of the major reasons, apart from the competence of the person, was how to be able to work together. And in that, his past track record seems to be very encouraging.
Bhanumurthy, he's being already dubbed as some kind of an inflation warrior. And, we see that today's stock market seems to have reacted negatively to it.
Well, I think I completely agree with my panelists that the government has gone for a continuity, particularly when the central bank is trying to put its hold on inflation as well as on the issues related to banking sector and other related financial market conditions. But one of the important things which we miss in the whole discussion is that in fact, URJIT is known more for fiscal conservatism. I mean, before he became the deputy governor, we knew him as more of a fiscal expert, and his views on fiscal policy is very, very well known to all of us, and I'm sure he's contributing a lot into this FRBM committee as well. And I think right now the major problem is how to coordinate between the Mint Street and the North Block, and at the same time how to have a better coordination between the monetary and the fiscal policy. In that kind of context, in my view, URJIT is the best candidate that we have at the moment. I'm sure he will try to continue this, whatever he's doing for the past 4 years as in charge of monetary policy. And now I think his responsibilities would increase. But given that I have always taken a position that it doesn't matter who is the governor of the RBI, because RBI itself is the very strongest institution of this country. We have seen many people who had different views before becoming governor, and they went to the RBI and they really changed to the RBI's stance. So I think the pragmatism is one thing which we really look forward from the governors, and I think in the history also showed that all the governors showed that pragmatism. I hope that URJIT also shows that pragmatism.
Okay.
You're talking of his impact on the stock market. Shobhade is appeared to have said that Raghuram Rajan put sex back into Sensex. Maybe this man will put the sense back into it.
Okay, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Yeah,
was he the best man?
Well,
because, looking at the other contenders, what we are told were whom we are told were the other contenders.
Well,
was he the best man?
Whether he's the best man or not, that time will tell us. But what I can tell you at this point in time, the decision was good, and for 3 good reasons, in my view. The first reason, is this, that RBI and central monetary policy making is undergoing a major change. You're moving from RBI governor-led monetary policy making to a monetary policy committee-led monetary policy making. Now, in this kind of a structure,
he himself had suggested it.
He himself is part of that thing, and he had helped draft that monetary policy framework which was signed in February 2015.
Right.
And now the monetary policy committee, which has been formed under the RBI Act amendment, he's also played a role there. And he had his own views, and I think many of his recommendations have been accepted by the government. So it is a good choice, because a man who was part of those recommendations has been now made in charge of the entire exercise, wherein he will have to have a deputy governor, you have the executive director in charge of monetary policy, and 3 experts who will be appointed by the government. So the man who was given the idea of this thing is now in charge of this entire process, so which is a good thing. Number 2 is, one is happy that the government did not opt, although there were talks about an IS officer coming in.
Right.
Now that is a good decision, because this is an expert's job, and it is good that the government did not go in for a short-term option, which is what was feared, that they will go in for a 2-year thing, get an IS officer in, with no disregard to my fellow panelists who are IS officers, but I'm saying is this, that
I'm not.
no, I mean some of them I said, but I think it's an expert's job is good to have an expert and the thing. And the third point, which is the most important point in my view, is that there is also this tradition of grooming somebody else in some other job and then putting him into the RBI governor slot, ignoring the claims of the deputy governor who has done very well.
Exactly.
Now, there have been cases in the last, as I have written actually in Business Standard, that post-independence, there has been no deputy governor who has gone to become a governor without a break. Now,
Except Amitabh Ghosh.
No, not days.
That was for a few days.
15
days.
days.
Till he was replaced by R.M. Malhotra.
Exactly, absolutely. So, Dr. Reddy was the eminent choice to succeed Mr. Bimal Jalan, had to actually go to IMF before he was brought back as the governor. Similarly, C. Rangarajan was replaced by, had to go to the Planning Commission and then come back to succeed Mr. S. Venkatramanan. So I think, and even Mr. Raghuram Rajan, who was brought in, he was parked in the CEA in the finance ministry before he was brought in as the governor. Now there was this thing, expectation that Mr. Arvind Subramanian is being groomed in this job,
right,
and he will be put in there. It's a good thing that the deputy governor, who is considered to have done the job for 3 years, and now he becomes the governor.
And before that, in the Reserve Bank as a consultant.
Absolutely. And finally, the point I would like to make is this: that this is a 3-year term, and his 3-year term coincides with their term will end in September 2019. So therefore, you will have a governor in place, and the new governor, if at all, has to be appointed whether the
by the new
government. So it's a politically it's a good decision.
Okay. So Mr. Vasudev, in fact, this 3-year term, this is what I was about to ask you, but Mr. Bhattacharya has, spoken about it. You think that, because there was a lot of discussion and debate after Raghuram Rajan's, decision to, after Raghuram Rajan's decision that, maybe the governor should get a 4-year term or a 5-year term. You think this 3-year term, which this government has given to him, given to URJIT Patel, is the right decision?
Well, that has been the past practice. All previous governors have initially been appointed for 3 years, and of course, some have got extensions, some have gone up to 5 years, some have not gone. So I think in keeping with the established practice, the initial appointment of Mr. URJIT Patel has been made for 3 years. Any change from that, whether 4 years, 5 years, would have unnecessarily raised questions. So I think government has been wise in sticking to a precedent which has been there for quite some time.
Okay. Mr. Desai.
Well, Venugopal Reddy got a 5-year term straight. So, I mean, BJP government took that decision.
So, Mr. Desai, this
Well, you know, if I may let out a secret, I was in the World Bank when Reddy was in the IMF, and when he got this call, he said, I have to give up my 2 years job as executive director in the IMF. And he told the then finance minister, Mr. Jaswant Singh, that unless I'm given a 5-year term, it will be very unfair for me
This is
to give
news.
up 2 years
This is
here
news.
and go back in 3 years. So that was a little exception. It was a condition which he put, which the government, I think, very rightly accepted.
Okay, that you have you revealed something which nobody knew actually. Mr. Desai, this constant friction, or what if you want to call it friction, between the government and the RBI about whether inflation targeting, growth, is it an inflation versus growth thing, which will again will we find that happening again?
The real problem in India is
No.
the biggest borrower in the market is, sorry, can I?
Sir, Mr. Desai, I've asked this, Mr. Desai, I'll come back to you.
The biggest borrower in the market happens to be the government. And in that sense, the government's own attitude to the market itself is distorted by the fact that it is the biggest single borrower in the market. And the Reserve Bank has this sort of dual problem. On the one hand, it is like an investment banker for the government, managing the government's borrowing program. On the other hand, it has been given the responsibility of managing the economy, which may require high interest rates, which is not necessarily in the interest of the government. So I would say that the friction and tension is inherent in the sort of multiplicity of roles which are today assigned to the RBI. One of the things that will have to happen if you really want to make sense of the inflation targeting and monetary policy committee is a rationalization of this. The first step is a debt management office, so that somebody else takes over that investment banker function of the government. The other dimension is banking regulation. I noticed that Raghuram Rajan has argued that the RBI, that give more power to the boards, and RBI should not be on the board. Now, this is another issue which is going to come up. So I think there will be other dimensions which will arise from the other functions which the RBI is performing. So I'd say that there is a lot of work ahead. And I'm happy that somebody like URJIT Patel, who is a person who has a sound sense of how the market operates, what needs to be done. And I think one of the good things about him is that he is actually a person who comes from outside, so to speak. People don't always know this, but he is actually a Ugandan who became a naturalized Indian.
After he came to India in the early 90s. Kenyan, right. Yes. And he learned his Hindi and Gujarati only after he came here.
And Gujarati probably.
He got his Indian passport in 3 days.
Yes. And you know
when he was to be the deputy governor.
Do you know who was the recommender? Do you know who was the recommender?
That's the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Dr. Manmohan Singh himself wrote a letter. That's what I read somewhere. Yes, Mr.
I think, on this first issue of his being given a 3-year term, not longer, is probably because he hit the ground running. He's already in the Reserve Bank. He's been there earlier as a consultant, as I was saying. So he probably didn't need a very long term, longish term, in order to be able to do what is on his table. And probably he himself realized it, so did the government, that unlike others who have to be given sufficient time to feel the ground before they start working. Second, I think the issue of there being inherent conflict between the role of the Reserve Bank and the government is well recognized all over. But what is more important is that these things are resolved through, not by exercising either side saying, I am autonomous of you, that I will not listen, but through dialogues. And probably these dialogues do not have to be in public, which was probably happening in the previous governor's term a little more frequently than it should have been. And I think something which is as inherent as that, gone on for 40 years, 50 years, that this will now go the way it was, and people have resolved it, and it is no longer a question of what is required. I think every government also recognizes probably inflation targeting is necessary. At the same time, the governors have also to take into picture the macro requirement of growth. That you cannot possibly, that what is expected is now we have to go up to a higher trajectory of 8%, 9%, and how do things happen? I think if either side stands on saying, no, I want 8%, you cut down the policy rates to, which is something which is going to fuel inflation and cause other kind of problems, etc., things are not going to be working. And I look forward now to a time when there would be much greater understanding and much greater accommodation of each other's point of view to take forward what is required.
Okay. Bhanumurthy, challenges. What are the challenges?
Well, there
Biggest challenge.
I think the challenges, I think the short-term challenges to the new governor is going to be the monetary policy committee itself. Right now, now that he has become governor, he may have to choose his own deputy first, which I think right now it's going to be.
You think he will get to choose his own deputy?
Usually not.
Well, it's a process. I mean, we really don't know whether he'll have his big say or not. But I'm sure government would certainly discuss with URJIT in choosing the deputy governor.
No, you should. I think we should remember that he was appointed through a process which had not been adopted earlier. There was some kind of a selection committee with cabinet secretary heading the committee and all. So you think that
And the governor will only be a member of that committee.
Yes.
Yes, financial regulators.
Well, I think the process, whatever ultimately it is being decided by the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, I think, given whatever the process it is. So it might happen same way in choosing the Deputy Governor. And it also depends on how, because this is going to be a new thing for us, we have to see in October how far, if at all we have the Monetary Policy Committee, we have to see how URJIT is going to see through that whole meeting process, because it's going to be new for government as well. That 3-member that government has to nominate, we have to wait and see how far they are going to function with the RBI. And the other thing is the FCNRB, funds that's going to be maturing from September onwards, nearly
$26 billion.
$25 billion plus dollars is going to go out of the country. I think the stage is set with liquidity being surplus in the banking sector at the moment. But again, we need to really see that there should not be any kind of knee-jerk reaction in the market. That's going to be a major challenge for the new governor. These are the two immediate short-term challenges. But I think on the medium term, I think the whole banking sector is going to be a huge challenge. And again, we need to wait and see whether he is going to follow Dr. Rajan's initiatives that have been taken already, and see that whether that can help in reviving the private investments in this country.
Okay, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Well, I see essentially 4 big challenges in front of him. One is the inflation targeting itself is going to be a very challenging affair for him, particularly at a time when the inflation, CPI-based inflation, is on the rise. And I think
It's crossed
it will,
over 6% now.
Absolutely. So therefore, I mean, what the advantage Rajan enjoyed was he enjoyed that declining inflation rate in the CPI, particularly, and forget about WPI. He had a WPI contraction actually. So I think inflation targeting would be a challenge for him, particularly because of the composition of the CPI, which is essentially food and vegetables, which is 48% or so, and then you have got fuel. So and the commodity cycle is bottoming out. So I think inflation targeting would be a big challenge. Number 2 would be, in my view, the banking challenge. The banking challenge, the banking sector is still in a big mess.
The NPAs and
NPAs, and and unless the banking NPAs and the bank's ability to lend is directly linked to the kind of investment revival that we hope this economy must see if before you get into a more sustainable path of growth. Number 3, I think he has to look at 2 areas. I mean, that is the 4th area, but anyway, let me say, divide them into 4, is what does he do in terms of institutionalizing the process of creating a separate debt office, which is neither an appendage of the Finance Ministry nor that of the Reserve Bank of India. So there has to be an independent debt office that must, conduct the operations of the government's borrowing requirements. And number 4 is the challenge would be how he makes sure that the Reserve Bank of India cedes its regulatory control over bond trading. I think the bond trading operations is a very funny situation where RBI itself controls and regulates that. I think it should ideally go over to SEBI. Now, so far, RBI resisted that very logical demand of it being moved to SEBI, and I think it will speak a lot of URJIT Patel's sagacity and understanding of this key market that he can perhaps cede control to SEBI in terms of bond trading.
Mr. Vasudev, the challenges.
Yeah, I think I would agree to many of the points which Mr. Bhattacharya has made. Of course, the last 2 that he made are really a manifestation of the turf issues within the RBI. And because RBI staff and as an institution, they do not want to give up the government borrowing program that they handle. They don't want to give up regulation of the government securities and all, though there is enough logic and reasoning to say that the open market operations and the government borrowing program should go to an independent debt office and regulation of government securities should go to SEBI. On inflation targeting as a challenge in the short term, I wouldn't say it would be that much of a challenge, given that the monsoon has been very good this year and international oil prices remain at a low level. And since a lot of inflation in India is food induced, in food prices induced, so maybe he will have a little easier sort of initial period. And he is also, I think, very lucky in the sense that the macroeconomic indicators generally are so much better when he is taking over as compared to what they were when Mr. Raghuram Rajan had taken over.
Okay.
And the fiscal situation is under control. I think the time is probably ripe for him to try to give a little more of a growth dimension to monetary policy. I think the weapons that are there in RBI's arsenal for dealing with monetary policy issues, I think he should probably use some of the CRR type of policies, reduction of that, because the transmission of the repo and the reverse repo policy changes has not been very effective in the banking sector.
Okay.
And the other more important challenge, I think, on the banking side, I just want to make one point, that the way the asset quality review has been done across the board without making any distinction between problems arising out of the real sector and problems arising out of the banking sector per se, I think has made the banks very risk averse. That is a challenge, I think, which URJIT Patel will have to face, how to instill more confidence and risk-taking capacity amongst the bankers, especially the public sector bankers, who today have become very risk-averse.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
I would say that
Quickly,
one is a short-term challenge is that he still has a lot of work to do on the monetary policy. Remember, he has to publish an operating procedure. That has not yet been done. He will have to do that. That means you and I will know how the Reserve Bank proposes to meet the inflation target. He may have a problem of giving an explanation of because already in July he's gone beyond the flexibility.
I think he's a leeway of 3/4 of successive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so let's say if it's bottom, but I would say that what the other things that he talked about, basically what you're looking at is a demerger operation, the equivalent of a demerger operation. And that's something like that will have to be done in order to protect the concerns of the staff.
Okay.
Finally, I would say the great challenge, what I really look forward to from him is, over the next 3 years, you're going to see a radical transformation of the payment system in this country.
Okay.
And I hope that he can oversee
Very
that.
clear. Just one sentence.
I'm looking forward to a much greater role which we'll have to handle now is foreign exchange stabilization.
Okay.
The rupee versus the dollar. We've again seen in the last few days it's taken a hit with FCNR $26 billion foreign exchange outflow possible. What might happen we'll have to deal with that.
Okay.
And
Okay,
alongside
sir.
with that,
I think we have completely
we'll have
run
to
out
look at bank consolidation issues also.
Okay, that's quite a number of challenges which the new RBI governor will face. We'll wait and watch how we will stand up to all these challenges and how we will respond to it. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, the big picture, same time tomorrow.